In our marriage, whatever my wife purchases also belongs to me. But if that's not okay, then she wants a divorce. My husband, Eric, has this habit of taking things from me for reasons that don't make sense. He even tries to impress others by giving away things I bought for my parents to his own family. But let me tell you, when I confront him with the truth, he looks as pale as a ghost. Before I married Eric, my grandparents left me a special gift, some real estate. When I thanked them and mentioned I might use it to support both of us in the future, they advised me to keep it a secret. Even though Eric was my husband, they told me not to let him know about this extra source of income or that I had enough to support us both. I felt bad for Eric, but I decided to follow my grandparents' advice. Sadly, my grandfather, who was very dear to me, passed away. As I continued my life with Eric, something unexpected happened. One day, I noticed $20,000 missing from our joint living expenses account. This account was mostly managed by me and was meant to cover the expenses we shared. I couldn't remember withdrawing such a large sum of money, so it had to be Eric. When I asked him about it, he casually said he lent it to his mom because she was in trouble. He didn't bother to inform me beforehand. He simply brushed it off, saying we had savings and it wouldn't make a big dent. But to me, it wasn't just about the money. It was the principle. The account was for both of us, and we should have discussed such significant withdrawals. Eric used to be more considerate and attentive, especially when we first got married. But now, he seemed different. A few days later, I had to visit my in-laws' house to return a package mistakenly delivered to us. They welcomed me warmly, but I couldn't shake the feeling that things were changing in our relationship. I had initially planned to drop off the package at the entrance of my in-laws' house, but somehow I found myself unable to refuse their invitation for tea. As I entered their living room, I couldn't help but notice an array of lavish items, expensive cosmetics, glamorous clothes, and health products. "My wonderful son gifted me all of these," my mother-in-law exclaimed proudly. "With $10,000 in the bank account, it's only natural to indulge a bit," she added casually. However, my heart sank when I remembered that Eric had lent money to his mother, Lisa, because she was in need. It didn't sit well with me that all the money seemed to have gone into these luxurious purchases. As I sipped my tea, my in-laws' smiles faltered, and they turned to me with a hint of apprehension in their eyes. "Your husband is such a good boy, always thinking of me," my father-in-law said, his tone taking on a slightly accusatory edge. "But what about you? Are you treating him well as his wife?" Their words felt like a veiled threat, as if they were insinuating that I wasn't fulfilling my duties as a wife. It dawned on me that Eric must have painted himself as the victim in his interactions with them, making me out to be the one at fault. Slowly, I began to feel disillusioned with both my in-laws and my husband. I hadn't expected to be treated so poorly and ignored in this way. The idea of divorce started to creep into my mind. I imagined returning to my parents' home and using the savings I had from my passive income to rebuild their house. Their current home, a spacious two-story house built over 28 years ago, was no longer suitable for them. With my brother and me gone, it felt empty and difficult for them to manage, especially considering their mobility issues. A cozy one-story house would be much more comfortable for them, I thought. Excitedly, I called my parents to share my plans. To my surprise, they weren't shocked by the idea of divorce, and they were thrilled at the prospect of having their home renovated. "That's wonderful news, dear," my mom exclaimed. "Thank you for thinking of us. We're so grateful." Encouraged by their support, I started making arrangements for the renovation. But just as I was getting into the swing of things, Eric confronted me. "How dare you use our savings without telling me to rebuild your parents' house?" he bellowed, his voice echoing in the living room. As he continued to berate me, I realized that he wasn't interested in understanding my feelings at all. "My parents will live in the new house then," I asserted, feeling a sense of ownership over the renovation project I had initiated for their benefit. Eric's response was swift and aggressive. "That's impossible. You used our joint funds to build it, so my parents have every right to live there. And cramming 4 people into that small one-story house isn't practical," he retorted, his voice rising in anger. His outburst only fueled my frustration. "Just give me the house then," he demanded, slamming his fist on the table. I knew that if I didn't disclose my passive income, his reaction would only worsen. So, with a heavy heart, I confessed, "To tell you the truth, I have passive income. I've been saving from the real estate my grandparents gifted me. I used that money for the renovation, not our shared funds." But instead of understanding, Eric erupted even more. "You're a terrible wife, hiding your income and manipulating mine," he accused, his face turning red with anger. As I watched him, it dawned on me why my grandparents had urged me to keep my passive income a secret. Perhaps they had sensed Eric's true nature all along. "I'll take the house as alimony," Eric declared, his tone final. "It's mine as your husband and the head of the family. And if you don't obey me, I'll divorce you." His words filled me with dismay and disillusionment. How had I not seen his true colors before? I had originally planned to use my passive income to support us in times of need, but now I had no desire to share it with him. "Be my guest," I responded, rising from my seat and leaving the house. I spent the night in a business hotel, needing space to clear my mind. But when I returned the next morning, Eric was waiting for me, his smile sickeningly smug as he handed me divorce papers. "You're lying about your passive income, aren't you?" he accused, his tone filled with suspicion. "You used it to take money from our joint account without telling me." I was speechless, unable to comprehend his accusations. Despite my honesty, he refused to believe me, clinging to his own warped version of the truth. Eric's snicker grated on my nerves as he thrust the divorce papers into my hand. "I know you can't live without me," he sneered before casually mentioning his plans to go out for a drink. It was like a slap in the face, a cruel reminder of his true nature. With a sinking feeling, I realized that Eric hadn't changed at all. He had been looking down on me since the beginning of our marriage, never truly considering my feelings. In that moment, I knew I had to leave. I hastily packed my belongings, filled out the divorce papers, and left home. Seeking refuge with my parents, I explained the situation, and we agreed that I would stay with them until the new house was ready. The following day, my phone buzzed incessantly with missed calls from Eric. Eventually, I picked up, steeling myself for what would likely be a difficult conversation. "Hey, all your stuff is gone," Eric said impatiently. I was taken aback by his tone. After all, he was the one who had initiated the divorce. "We're getting a divorce, so that's normal," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. But then Eric surprised me. "Hey, can you let my parents live in the new house?" he asked, his voice suddenly soft. "I don't care if I have to live with your parents, please." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It was as if he had suddenly realized the value of my passive income. But his request felt manipulative, as if he was trying to guilt-trip me into giving him what he wanted. "You don't really care about the savings, do you?" I retorted, frustration bubbling up inside me. "You're just careless with money and leave all the hassle to other people." Eric fell silent, and I could sense his discomfort. But then he continued, oblivious to my growing anger. "I said I'd surprise my parents with a house," he insisted. His words only fueled my frustration. "You're just trying to take advantage of my hard work," I snapped. "You didn't even buy the house yourself, yet you present it as if you did." In that moment, I realized the depth of his deception. He had manipulated me into believing he was someone he wasn't, all to benefit himself. It was a betrayal that cut deep, leaving me feeling more alone than ever before. There was no justification for Eric to trample on my feelings and intentions. The house I built for my parents was a labor of love, and I refused to hand it over to him just so he could flaunt it to his parents. But Eric persisted, his voice growing louder as he tried to convince me. Husbands and wives are supposed to help each other, he argued. I'll tell them that you built it. Please. I shook my head, adamant in my decision. We're not a married couple anymore, I reminded him. We're strangers now, especially since I've already filed for divorce. On the day he handed me the divorce papers, I wasted no time in submitting them to the city office. He had wanted a divorce so badly, and I saw no reason to delay the inevitable. I was already in the process of reverting all the paperwork back to its pre-married state. His disbelief was palpable. You already filed it, he exclaimed. Why are you so surprised when you're the one who asked for the divorce? But his attempts to reconcile fell on deaf ears. No, thank you, I replied firmly. Please give my regards to your parents. Despite my clear refusal, Eric persisted, bombarding me with voicemails and messages, pleading for us to get back together. But I saw through his facade. He wasn't interested in reconciliation. He was after my property and fortune. To sever all ties, I blocked all contact information related to him and his family. Meanwhile, the new house for my parents was completed, and we moved in, finding solace and comfort in our new home. Later, I met with a mutual friend who knew both Eric and me. I explained our divorce, and my friend shared some surprising news about Eric's post-divorce life. Firstly, he abruptly resigned from his job, claiming he no longer needed to work hard because of his newfound real estate. His disappearance left his colleagues and bosses puzzled and frustrated. Despite his attempts to return to work the next day, his bosses reprimanded him for the disruption caused by his sudden resignation. They demanded an explanation, but Eric struggled to come up with a convincing story. In the end, the truth came out. The company learned about our divorce and Eric's reliance on my income. His attempt to hide the real reason for his actions only exposed his deceitful nature further. It's clear now that Eric, who once mocked my passive income, was only trying to exploit my earnings for his own gain. His desire to impress his parents with a lavish gift showed his lack of consideration for me and our future together. When I reflect on his actions, I feel a sense of liberation from any lingering feelings I may have had for him. I've heard that Eric has moved back in with his parents, perhaps facing some tough love from them as he struggles to find a new job. His attempts to re-enter the workforce have been hindered by the circumstances of his abrupt departure from his last job. In a way, it seems like he's reaping the consequences of his own actions. As for me, I'm living comfortably with my parents in the home I built with my own hands. I've found a job that brings me fulfillment, and I'm enjoying the freedom to pursue my own happiness. The passive income that I once saved for Eric and our future will now be used to support those who have supported me throughout my journey. It's a fitting use for the resources that were once tied to a relationship that no longer serves me. In the wake of my divorce from Eric, life took on a new sense of purpose and direction. Freed from the constraints of a relationship that had turned sour, I found myself embracing opportunities and experiences with a renewed vigor. Living with my parents in the house I had built with my own hands became more than just a sanctuary. It became a symbol of my independence and resilience. Each corner of the house held memories of hard work and determination, a testament to my ability to forge my own path. Finding a job that resonated with my passions was a revelation. It wasn't just about earning a paycheck, it was about pursuing something that brought me joy and fulfillment every day. Immersed in work that felt meaningful, I discovered a newfound sense of purpose and fulfillment. As for Eric, his journey post-divorce seemed fraught with challenges. Returning to his parents' home marked a humbling experience for him as he faced the consequences of his actions and sought to rebuild his life from the ground up. It was a stark reminder that actions have consequences, and sometimes the repercussions can be harsh. Despite the challenges he faced, I couldn't help but feel a sense of detachment from his struggles. The resentment and hurt that once consumed me had dissipated, replaced by a sense of empathy and understanding. While I couldn't erase the pain of the past, I could acknowledge that we were both on separate paths now, each carving out our own destinies. With my passive income no longer tied to a future with Eric, I found myself reevaluating its purpose. Instead of holding onto it for a future that no longer existed, I decided to channel it towards those who had stood by me through thick and thin. Whether it was supporting my parents in their retirement or contributing to causes close to my heart, I was determined to use my resources to make a positive impact in the world. In the end, the divorce from Eric was more than just the end of a chapter. It was the beginning of a new journey filled with possibilities and opportunities. And as I embraced the future with open arms, I knew that the best was yet to come.